Marcus Chen had always believed that true love couldn't be bought. At 28, when his grandfather passed away and left him a $500 million trust fund, Marcus made a decision that would change his life forever. He would live as an ordinary man, hiding his fortune to find someone who loved him for who he was, not what he had. Working as a high school math teacher in suburban Portland, Marcus drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic and lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment. His clothes came from discount stores, and his idea of a fancy dinner was the local Italian restaurant with the Tuesday night special. To everyone around him, including his wife Sarah, he was just another hard-working teacher making ends meet. Sarah had been different when they first met at a community college night class 5 years ago. She was studying business administration, working part-time at a coffee shop, and Marcus had been immediately drawn to her infectious laugh and ambitious spirit. They'd bonded over cheap takeout dinners and dreams of the future. She said she didn't need luxury. She just needed love. They married in a small ceremony at the courthouse with a reception at a local community center. Marcus's lawyer had insisted on a prenuptial agreement, carefully worded to protect the assets Sarah didn't know existed. She'd signed it without question, touched that Marcus wanted to protect the small teacher's pension he'd mentioned. For 3 years, their marriage had been happy. They'd saved for small vacations, celebrated anniversaries at home with homemade dinners, and talked about eventually buying a starter home. Marcus had been content believing he'd found genuine love. But lately, things had changed. Sarah had gotten a job as a sales associate at a luxury real estate firm, and suddenly their simple life wasn't enough. She started coming home with brochures for houses they couldn't afford, and catalogs for furniture that cost more than Marcus's monthly salary. Her new colleagues drove BMWs and vacationed in the Maldives. Her new boss, Richard Thornton, was a divorced 45-year-old who wore Rolex watches and owned a penthouse downtown. "Why don't you ask for a raise?" Sarah asked one evening, her voice tinged with frustration as she scrolled through Instagram photos of her coworkers' weekend in Napa Valley. "Or look for a better job. Teaching is noble, Marcus, but it's not going to give us the life we deserve." Marcus looked up from the stack of geometry tests he was grading. "I thought we were happy with our life. We're barely scraping by." Sarah snapped, then softened her tone. "I'm sorry. I want more." "Don't you want more? A real house, nice cars? The ability to travel without counting every penny?" "Money isn't everything, Sarah," she laughed bitterly, spoken like someone who's never had it. The arguments became more frequent. Sarah started working late, attending networking events that Marcus wasn't invited to. He'd see her texting and smiling at her phone, quickly putting it away when he entered the room. The distance between them grew from inches to miles. Then came the night that shattered everything. Marcus came home early from a teacher conference to find Sarah packing suitcases in their bedroom. For a moment he stood in the doorway, frozen. "Sarah?" She turned, and he saw something in her eyes he'd never seen before. A cold determination mixed with something that looked almost like contempt. "I'm leaving." "Marcus." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "What? Why?" "We can work through whatever." "There's nothing to work through," she interrupted, zipping up a suitcase with sharp, angry movements. "I've been fooling myself, thinking love was enough. It's not. I can't spend the rest of my life watching every penny, driving that embarrassing car, living in this cramped apartment while everyone around me actually makes something of themselves." "Is there someone else?" Marcus asked quietly. Though he already knew the answer, Sarah had the decency to look away. "Richard and we understand each other. He can give me the life I deserve. He appreciates ambition, and I don't. You're content being a nobody, Marcus. A broke teacher who'll never amount to anything more. I need someone who wants to build an empire, not grade papers for $35,000 a year." She grabbed her suitcases and walked past him. At the door, she turned back one final time. "I'm sorry, but I can't be poor forever. Goodbye, Marcus. Try not to be too much of a loser." The door closed, and Marcus stood alone in the apartment they'd shared, listening to the echo of her footsteps fading down the hallway. His phone buzzed. His wealth manager probably calling about the latest quarterly earnings on his hidden portfolio. He didn't answer. Instead, he sat down on their worn couch and did something he hadn't done in years. He cried. But even through the tears, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered that perhaps this betrayal would become his liberation. He just didn't know how right that voice would be. The divorce papers arrived 3 weeks later. Marcus signed them without contest, his lawyer looking at him with confusion as he agreed to split their minimal, combined assets. Sarah walked away with half of his teacher's salary savings, about $15,000, and the newer of their 2 cars. She had no idea she was leaving behind a fortune. Mr. Chen, his attorney, Margaret Winters, said carefully. She doesn't know. You could let her go, Marcus interrupted. She made her choice. For the first few months, Marcus felt hollow. He continued teaching, finding solace in his students' enthusiasm for mathematics, but the apartment felt like a tomb of failed dreams. His colleague and friend, James Rodriguez, finally staged an intervention over beers at their usual dive bar. Man, you've got to stop punishing yourself, James said. She showed you who she really was. Be grateful you found out now. Marcus stared at his beer. I thought she loved me. She loved the idea of you, or rather what she thought you could become. James leaned forward. Look, I don't know what you're doing living like a monk on a teacher's salary when you clearly have options. Yeah. I've seen your fancy lawyer and your complete lack of stress about the divorce settlement. But whatever your deal is, maybe it's time to stop hiding. That night, Marcus lay awake thinking about James's words. What was he trying to prove anymore? He'd hidden his wealth to find authentic love, and instead he'd been rejected for not having the very fortune he'd concealed. The irony was almost poetic. The next morning, Marcus called his wealth manager, David Chen, a distant cousin, and his investment advisor, Patricia Moore. I want to start actively growing the portfolio, Marcus told them during their video conference. Real estate development, tech investments, sustainable energy. I want to build something meaningful. No more passive inheritance management. Patricia smiled. I was wondering when you'd finally decide to stop playing broke teacher and start playing billionaire philanthropist. I'm not quitting teaching, Marcus clarified. But I am ready to do more with what I have. Over the next 18 months, Marcus threw himself into building an empire. He invested in 3 promising tech startups, 2 of which exploded in value. He funded a revolutionary solar panel company that caught the attention of major environmental groups. He purchased and renovated struggling apartment complexes, converting them into affordable housing with community centers and job training programs. But his crown jewel was the Chen Educational Foundation. Using $50 million of his own money, Marcus created a nationwide program providing free tutoring, school supplies, and college scholarships to underprivileged students. He remained anonymous as the founder, but the foundation's impact was immediate and profound. Through it all, Marcus kept teaching. His students never knew that their quiet math teacher was the anonymous benefactor who just donated new computers to their school library or funded their robotics club. Then came Emma. Emma Park had started as a teaching assistant in the English department, a 26-year-old graduate student working on her doctorate in literature. She was brilliant, kind, and had a laugh that reminded Marcus that joy still existed in the world. They'd met in the teacher's lounge, bonding over terrible coffee and a shared frustration with standardized testing. Want to grab dinner sometime? Marcus asked one afternoon, surprising himself with his boldness. And before you answer, full disclosure, I'm recently divorced, I drive a Honda Civic that should probably be retired, and I can offer you pizza or Thai food, but nothing fancier. Emma had smiled warmly. Thai food sounds perfect. And full disclosure back, I don't care about fancy. Their first date lasted 4 hours. They talked about books, teaching philosophy, their families, and dreams for the future. For the first time since Sarah left, Marcus felt the weight in his chest begin to lift. As months passed, their relationship deepened. Emma knew Marcus as a teacher, nothing more, and she loved him for his kindness, his passion for education, and the way he actually listened when she spoke. Marcus found himself falling harder than he'd ever fallen before, but this time, the shadow of his secret wealth loomed over him differently. He needed to tell her. She deserved the truth. He was planning how to reveal everything when his world shifted again. Forbes was doing a feature on hidden philanthropists, America's secret givers. Persistent journalist named Rebecca Martinez had been investigating the Chen Educational Foundation's mysterious founder. Despite Marcus's careful anonymity, Rebecca was exceptional at her job. She'd tracked shell companies, interviewed grant recipients, and finally connected the dots to a modest math teacher in Portland who had a very interesting trust fund. "Mr. Chen," Rebecca said when she called him at home, "I'd like to interview you for our November issue. The Teacher Billionaire. How Marcus Chen built a $2 billion empire while grading papers." Marcus felt his stomach drop. $2 billion? Your investments have performed remarkably well. Our analysts estimate your current net worth at approximately $2.1 billion. Congratulations, Mr. Chen. You're about to become very famous. After hanging up, Marcus sat in stunned silence. $2 billion. His $500 million inheritance had quadrupled in 5 years. Through strategic investments he'd barely paid attention to, and now everyone would know, including Emma, including Sarah. The article would publish in 2 weeks. Marcus had 14 days to tell Emma the truth before she read it in a magazine or heard it from colleagues. 14 days before his carefully maintained ordinary life exploded into something unrecognizable. That night, over dinner at their favorite Thai restaurant, Marcus took Emma's hand. "There's something I need to tell you," he began, his heart pounding. "Something I should have told you from the beginning." Emma's expression shifted to concern. "Okay, whatever it is, we'll handle it." Marcus took a deep breath and told her everything. The inheritance, the hidden wealth, Sarah's departure and the reason behind his simple lifestyle, the empire he'd been building in secret, the Forbes article that would publish in 2 weeks. Emma listened without interrupting, her face unreadable. When he finished, silence stretched between them like an ocean. "Say something," Marcus whispered. "Please." Emma looked at him with eyes that glistened with unshed tears, and Marcus braced himself for rejection, for accusations of dishonesty, for the end of the best relationship he'd ever had. Instead, she started laughing. Emma's laughter wasn't mocking. It was the incredulous sound of someone whose entire reality had just shifted sideways. She pressed her hands to her face, shoulders shaking, while Marcus sat frozen across the table, terrified he'd just destroyed the best thing in his life. "I'm sorry," Emma finally gasped, wiping her eyes. "I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at..." God, Marcus, $2 billion? And you've been stressing about affording the lunch special? "I know I should have told you sooner." "You absolutely should have," Emma interrupted, her smile fading into something more serious. "That's a massive secret to keep." Marcus felt his heart sink. "I understand if you can't trust me anymore. If you want to walk away." "Walk away?" Emma reached across the table and grabbed his hand. "Marcus, I'm upset you didn't trust me with the truth earlier, yes. That's something we'll need to work through. But walk away from you? From us?" She squeezed his fingers. "I fell in love with a math teacher who brings donuts to his students when they ace their tests, and who argues passionately about the beauty of calculus. Finding out he's also secretly Batman doesn't change that." "Batman doesn't have superpowers," Marcus said weakly, hope beginning to bloom in his chest. "Neither does a teacher who uses his wealth to fund education and affordable housing instead of buying yachts." Emma countered. "Marcus, what you've built, what you've done with that money, that's incredible. The secrecy hurts, but I understand why you did it." "After what your ex-wife did?" "Sarah," Marcus supplied. "Her name was Sarah." "After what Sarah did," Emma continued, "I understand why you'd be cautious. But Marcus, we need to build this relationship on honesty. Complete honesty. No more secrets, Marcus promised. "Emma, you need to know that when this Forbes article comes out, everything changes. There will be media attention, people asking for money, old acquaintances coming out of the woodwork, and gold diggers," Emma added wryly. "People who will wonder if the graduate student teaching assistant is with you for your money." Marcus hadn't even considered that angle. "Anyone who knows you would never think that. You'd be surprised what people think when billions of dollars are involved." Emma's expression turned thoughtful. "Actually, I should probably warn you about something too. Remember how I mentioned I worked in real estate sales for a year before going back to grad school?" Marcus nodded, suddenly wary. "I worked at Thornton Luxury Properties, for Richard Thornton. Sarah was my supervisor." The Thai restaurant suddenly felt very small. "What?" "I quit a few months before you and I met. The environment was toxic and Sarah..." Emma paused, choosing her words carefully. She wasn't kind to people she considered beneath her. "I was just an assistant with a bachelor's degree and she made sure I knew it. When you mentioned your ex-wife's name was Sarah, and that she'd left you for her boss in real estate, I wondered. Then I saw a photo on your phone once and I knew for sure." Marcus stared at her, processing. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because it wasn't relevant to us," Emma said simply. "Your past with her was your business to share when you were ready. just like your wealth was your secret to reveal. But Marcus, you should know, Sarah's life with Richard isn't the fairy tale she probably imagined. Over the next hour, Emma explained what she knew. Richard Thornton was a serial romancer who'd been through 3 wives and countless affairs. Sarah had been his latest conquest, but the shine had apparently worn off quickly. Emma's former colleagues had kept her updated. Sarah was miserable, trapped in a relationship with a controlling man who flaunted his wealth but used it as a weapon to maintain power. She made her choice, Marcus said, though hearing about Sarah's unhappiness brought him no joy. She did, Emma agreed. And you made yours. You chose to keep building a meaningful life, even after she shattered your trust. That says everything about who you are. The Forbes article published on a crisp November morning, 2 weeks after Marcus's confession to Emma. His phone began buzzing at 6 a.m. and didn't stop. Text messages from old college friends he hadn't spoken to in years. Emails from investment opportunities and charitable causes. News outlets requesting interviews. At school, the principal called an emergency meeting. Marcus stood before the faculty, feeling exposed and vulnerable. I apologize for not being transparent, Marcus said to his colleagues. But I want to be clear, I'm still a teacher. That hasn't changed. What's changed is that everyone now knows I invest my family wealth in causes I believe in, including education. The Chen Educational Foundation will continue its work, and I'll continue teaching calculus to juniors who think they hate math. James Rodriguez started a slow clap that spread through the room. Man, you're still buying the next round of beers. I don't care how many billions you have. The media frenzy was intense but brief. Marcus gave one interview to Rebecca Martinez for Forbes, explaining his philosophy of wealth as responsibility rather than luxury. He spoke about his foundation, his investments in sustainable technology, and his commitment to affordable housing. When Rebecca asked about his modest lifestyle, Marcus smiled. True wealth isn't about what you own. It's about what you give and who you love. I have everything I need. The article went viral. Marcus Chen became the internet's favorite billionaire, the humble teacher who'd quietly built an empire while grading papers and coaching mathletes. Memes proliferated. Think pieces were written. Harvard Business School added his investment strategy to their curriculum. Through it all, Emma remained his anchor. She moved into his apartment. Marcus finally agreed to upgrade to a nicer place, though he refused the penthouse his advisor suggested. They navigated the attention together, setting boundaries with media and establishing a private life separate from Marcus's public philanthropy. It was Emma who suggested hosting a charity gala for the Chen Educational Foundation's 5-year anniversary. You've been doing this amazing work anonymously, she argued. But there's power in visibility too. Think of how many more people you could inspire, how many more donations you could attract for the cause. Marcus agreed, and plans began for a black tie event at Portland's most prestigious hotel. Invitations went out to donors, educators, and business leaders across the Pacific Northwest. The event was scheduled for March 15th, exactly 5 years after Sarah had walked out. Marcus didn't send Sarah an invitation. He'd moved on, built a new life, and found real love. There was no reason for her to be part of his future. But Richard Thornton was a major real estate developer who donated to various educational causes over the years. His name was on the invite list approved by Marcus's event coordinator, which meant Sarah would be there too. 2 weeks before the gala, Marcus received a call from his security coordinator. Mr. Chen, I wanted to give you a heads up. Richard Thornton RSVP'd yes, +1. His +1 is listed as Sarah Chen. Marcus felt Emma's hand on his shoulder. She'd been listening to the call on speaker. She kept your name, Emma observed quietly. Let her come, Marcus said, surprising himself with how steady his voice sounded. She can't hurt me anymore. And maybe seeing that event, seeing what I've built and who I've become, maybe that's the closure we both need. But as the gala approached, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that March 15th would be more than just a celebration. It would be a reckoning. The Grand Cascade Hotel lived up to its name on the night of March 15th. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across the ballroom, where 500 guests mingled beneath soaring ceilings adorned with hand-painted frescoes. The Chen Educational Foundation's impact played out on large screens positioned throughout the venue. Children receiving laptops, students accepting college scholarship awards, Teachers crying with joy at renovated classrooms. Marcus stood near the main entrance in a perfectly tailored Tom Ford tuxedo, his first truly expensive purchase in years, made at Emma's insistence. "You're honoring the foundation's work," she'd argued. "You can dress like you respect the occasion." Emma herself was radiant in a midnight blue gown, her hand resting comfortably in the crook of his arm. They'd spent the last hour greeting guests, superintendents and CEOs, the mayor and several state legislators, teachers whose programs had received grants, and students whose lives had been transformed by foundation scholarships. "Mr. Chen," said Maria Gonzalez, a high school senior who'd received a full ride to MIT, "I just wanted to thank you again. Before the foundation, college wasn't even a possibility. Now I'm going to study engineering. You changed my entire family's future." Marcus felt the familiar tightness in his throat that came whenever he met scholarship recipients. "You earned it, Maria. The foundation just opened a door you were already prepared to walk through. Your hard work did the rest." As Maria moved away to rejoin her parents, Marcus's security chief, David Wu, appeared at his elbow. "Mr. Chen, Richard Thornton and his guest just arrived." Marcus's hand tightened involuntarily on his champagne flute. Emma noticed immediately. "We knew this was coming," she murmured. "Remember, you're not the same man she left. And I'm here." They were standing near the silent auction tables when Marcus saw her. 5 years had changed Sarah. Her hair was shorter, styled in an expensive cut, and she wore a dress that probably cost more than 3 months of Marcus's old teacher salary. Diamond earrings caught the light as she moved, and her arm was linked through Richard Thornton's, but it was her face that struck Marcus most. She looked older, certainly, but also harder. The laugh lines he remembered had been replaced by tension around her mouth. Her smile, as she spoke to other guests, seemed practiced rather than genuine. Sarah was scanning the room, clearly searching for someone. When her eyes finally found Marcus, she stopped mid-conversation, her face draining of color. Marcus watched as her gaze traveled from his face to his tuxedo, to Emma at his side, and then to the massive foundation logo on the screens above them. He saw the exact moment the full reality crashed into her. The wealth she'd never known existed. The empire he'd built after she left. The beautiful woman now wearing what appeared to be an engagement ring on her left hand. Emma had insisted on the ring 2 weeks ago. "We're engaged in everything but name," she'd said. "I want to marry you, Marcus. I wanted to marry you before I knew about the billions, and I want to marry you now. So let's make it official." The ring was a simple platinum band with a modest diamond, tasteful rather than ostentatious, but Sarah's eyes locked onto it like a laser sight. "Marcus!" Richard Thornton's voice boomed as they approached. The older man had the aggressive confidence of someone who'd bought his way through life. "Finally meeting the man of the hour. Hell of an operation you've built here. I had no idea my old employee's husband was sitting on this kind of empire." "Ex-husband," Sarah corrected quietly, her eyes still fixed on Marcus. Right, Richard continued, oblivious to the tension. "Sarah mentioned you two were married. Small world. She's told me all about your teaching days." "Has she?" Marcus kept his voice neutral. Sarah finally found her voice. "Marcus, I didn't know about any of this. When did I become successful?" Marcus finished for her. "I've always been successful, Sarah. You just had a very narrow definition of what success looked like." Emma squeezed his arm gently, a reminder to stay kind. Marcus took a breath. "I'm glad you could both come tonight. The foundation has helped over 10,000 students in 5 years. That's what matters." 10,000, Sarah repeated numbly. "And you funded this?" "I helped establish it," Marcus acknowledged. "But the real work is done by educators and administrators and the students themselves. I just provided resources." Richard, finally sensing the awkwardness, steered Sarah toward the bar. "We'll let you get back to your hosting duties. Congratulations on everything." As they walked away, Marcus saw Sarah glance back 3 times, her expression unreadable. "That went better than I expected," Emma said. "The night's not over yet." Emma proved prescient. An hour later, as Marcus was speaking with a group of foundation board members, Sarah appeared at his elbow. She'd clearly been drinking, not drunk, but definitely fortified with liquid courage. "I need to speak with you," she said, interrupting a conversation about expanding the scholarship program to rural Oregon. "Privately, please." Emma started to object, but Marcus nodded. "It's fine. 5 minutes." He followed Sarah to a quiet alcove near the hotel's library, away from the gala's noise. In the dim light, he could see that she'd been crying. Her mascara was slightly smudged, hastily repaired. "Why didn't you tell me?" Sarah's voice cracked. "About the money. About all of it. We were married, Marcus. You let me leave thinking I was exactly what I appeared to be," Marcus interrupted. "A teacher who loved you enough to share a simple life. That's who I was, Sarah. You're the one who decided it wasn't enough. But if you'd known, you would have stayed for the wrong reasons. Just like you left for the wrong reasons." Sarah flinched. "I made a mistake. The worst mistake of my life. He's not who I thought he was. He's controlling and cold, and he uses his money as a weapon. Every gift comes with strings. Every dinner conversation is a negotiation. I'm miserable, Marcus." "I'm sorry you're unhappy," Marcus said, and meant it. "But that's not my responsibility anymore, isn't it?" Sarah stepped closer, her voice dropping to an intimate whisper. "We were good together once. We could be again. I understand now what you were trying to teach me, that money isn't everything. I learned that lesson. But Marcus, we could have everything, love and wealth. We could travel, build something together, be partners in every sense." "I already have that," Marcus said gently. "With Emma, the teaching assistant?" Sarah's desperation turned sharp. "Marcus, she worked for me. She was nobody. She's with you for your money. She's with me for the same reason you should have been." Marcus interrupted, his voice firm. "Because she knows who I am and loves me anyway. Emma knew about my wealth and didn't care. She supported my teaching career, celebrated my foundation work, and yes, she'll be my partner in everything going forward. She's everything you couldn't be, Sarah." Tears streamed down Sarah's face now, mascara be damned. "Please, I'm begging you. Give me another chance. I'll sign any prenup, live any lifestyle you want. I just want you back, the real you." Marcus felt a surprising wave of pity. This wasn't the confident woman who'd called him a loser 5 years ago. This was someone who'd chased fool's gold and found only emptiness. "Sarah, I hope you find happiness," Marcus said quietly. "Real happiness, not just security or status. But you won't find it with me. That door closed the night you called me broke and walked away. Marcus, I need to get back to the gala, to my fiancé and the foundation's guests." He turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, you were right about one thing. I did amount to something. But I always was something, even when I was just a teacher. You just couldn't see it." Marcus walked back toward the ballroom, leaving Sarah in the alcove. He didn't look back. Emma was waiting where he'd left her, speaking with James Rodriguez and his wife. When she saw Marcus's expression, she excused herself and met him halfway. "How did it go?" She asked for another chance. Begged for one, actually. Emma's eyebrows rose. And I told her I already have everything I need." Marcus pulled Emma close, feeling the rightness of her in his arms. "Dance with me?" They moved onto the dance floor as the band played something slow and jazzy. Other couples joined them. Teachers dancing with spouses, students dancing with dates, board members swaying to the music. Marcus saw Richard Thornton near the bar, alone, checking his phone. Sarah was nowhere to be seen. "She's gone," Emma murmured, following his gaze. "I saw her leave about 5 minutes ago. She was crying." "I know I should feel victorious or vindicated or something," Marcus said, "but I just feel sad for her." "That's because you're a good man," Emma replied. "Which is exactly why I'm marrying you. Though I should probably warn you, I want at least 3 kids, and they're all going to be as stubborn as me." Marcus laughed, the tension finally breaking. 3 kids with your stubbornness? I should probably buy a bigger house. Now you're thinking like a billionaire, Emma teased. The rest of the gala passed in a blur of speeches and toasts. Marcus spoke about the Foundation's mission and introduced scholarship recipients who brought the audience to tears with their stories. The silent auction raised an additional $2 million. By the time the last guest departed at midnight, Marcus felt both exhausted and exhilarated. "Come on, future husband," Emma said, linking her arm through his. "Let's go home." As they walked to the valet stand, Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I'm sorry for everything. I hope you find all the happiness I threw away." Marcus showed Emma the message, then deleted it. Some chapters needed to stay closed. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the backyard of his new home. Not a mansion despite his wealth, but a comfortable craftsman-style house in Portland's West Hills with enough room for the family he and Emma were planning. The yard was filled with people he loved. James Rodriguez manning a smoking barbecue grill, fellow teachers and their families playing lawn games, foundation board members discussing the upcoming scholarship cycle, and Emma's family, who'd flown in from California for the weekend. "You've got a good life, Mr. Billionaire Teacher," James said, flipping burgers. "Though I still can't believe you convinced Emma to marry you. She's way out of your league." "Don't I know it?" Marcus agreed, watching Emma laugh with his mother across the lawn. The wedding was scheduled for next month, a small, intimate ceremony despite the attention Marcus's name now commanded. They'd decided to get married at the high school where they'd met, in the library where they'd had their first real conversation over terrible coffee. Marcus's phone buzzed. The Forbes reporter Rebecca Martinez requesting a follow-up interview about the Foundation's expanded programs. Over the past 6 months, Marcus had become more comfortable with the public attention, learning to use his platform to advocate for education reform and sustainable investment practices. The Chen Educational Foundation had doubled its reach, now operating in 20 states. Marcus had recruited other wealthy individuals to contribute, creating a model of collaborative philanthropy that was being studied at business schools. He'd also started a venture capital fund specifically for education technology startups founded by women and people of color, a project Emma had suggested after noting the industry's diversity problems. Marcus continued teaching 3 classes per week, though he'd reduced his schedule to make time for foundation work. His students knew about his wealth now, but he'd worked hard to maintain normalcy in the classroom. The day after the Forbes article published, he'd walked into class and said, "Yes, I have money. No, it doesn't change anything about derivatives or your upcoming calculus test. Open your books to chapter 12. His phone buzzed again, but this time it was his security chief. "FYI, Richard Thornton declared bankruptcy last month. Real estate fraud investigation. Thought you should know." Marcus showed the message to James, who whistled low. "Karma's a beast. What about Sarah?" "No idea," Marcus admitted. "I haven't heard anything about her since the gala." He'd wondered occasionally what happened to his ex-wife. His lawyer had mentioned that the divorce certificate still needed to be updated with Sarah's new legal name if she'd remarried, but no changes had been filed. Other than that one text the night of the gala, there'd been no contact. Marcus was about to put his phone away when it buzzed one final time. His lawyer. "FYI, Sarah Mitchell Chen filed paperwork to reclaim her maiden name. Divorce is now officially closed. Thought you'd want to know. Mitchell." He'd forgotten that was her maiden name. The notification felt like the final period at the end of a long sentence. The story of Marcus and Sarah was truly finished. She'd removed his name, severed the last legal connection. He hoped it meant she was finally moving forward. "You okay?" Emma appeared at his elbow, reading his expression. "Sarah dropped my last name. It's official. We're completely done." Emma wrapped her arms around his waist. "How do you feel about that?" Marcus considered the question. 5 years ago, Sarah's departure had devastated him. A year ago, seeing her at the gala had stirred up complicated emotions. But now, "I feel free," he said honestly. "And grateful. If she hadn't left, I might never have found you. I might never have started actively building the foundation or embracing what I could do with my wealth. In a strange way, her rejection was the best thing that ever happened to me." "Speaking of best things," Emma said, a mischievous smile playing at her lips, "I have news. But you have to promise not to freak out." Marcus pulled back to look at her face. "That's a concerning preamble. I'm pregnant." Time seemed to stop. The noise of the backyard party faded to nothing. Marcus stared at Emma, processing, and then a smile spread across his face that felt like it might split his cheeks. "Really?" "Really. About 8 weeks along. I wanted to wait until the end of the first trimester to tell you, but I'm terrible at keeping secrets, as you know." Marcus picked Emma up and spun her around, laughing, and suddenly the party noise came rushing back because everyone was cheering. They'd apparently been less subtle than they thought. James raised his beer. To the future, baby Chen. May they inherit their father's mathematical mind and their mother's common sense. The celebration continued late into the evening. Marcus's mother cried happy tears and immediately began planning the nursery. Emma's father, a stoic engineer, shook Marcus's hand with genuine warmth and said, "You're going to be a great dad." As the sun set over Portland, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Marcus stood on his deck watching his loved ones celebrate. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, the inheritance he'd hidden, the marriage that had failed, the years of building both an empire and an authentic life, and the woman who'd loved him for exactly who he was. 3 months. Later, Marcus Chen and Emma Park were married in the West Ridge High School library, surrounded by books and friends and family. Emma wore her grandmother's wedding dress, altered to accommodate her growing belly. Marcus wore the same suit he'd worn to his first teaching interview, a touch of nostalgia that made Emma laugh and cry simultaneously. "I promise to love you, in poverty and in wealth," Marcus said during his vows, "in success and in failure, in ordinary moments and in extraordinary ones. You saw me when I was invisible and loved me when I felt unlovable. Everything I have, every dollar, every asset, every achievement, means nothing compared to having you." Emma's vows were characteristically practical. "I promise to always tell you the truth even when it's uncomfortable. To support your dreams while pursuing my own. To raise our children to understand that wealth is a responsibility, not a trophy. And to never, ever let you buy a sports car just because you technically can afford it." The crowd laughed. Marcus grinned. "Not even a Tesla?" "We'll negotiate," Emma allowed. The reception was held in the school cafeteria, transformed with string lights and flowers donated by local businesses. Students served as waiters, earning community service hours. The wedding cake was made by a bakery whose owner had received a small business loan from one of Marcus's investment funds. During the father-daughter dance, Emma's father told Marcus, "My daughter has always been able to see through bullshit. She saw who you really were, wealth aside. That's why I know she's making the right choice." "I'm the one making the right choice," Marcus replied. "She's extraordinary. Yes, she is. So don't screw it up." "Not planning to, sir." Months passed in a blur of foundation work, teaching, and preparing for the baby. Emma finished her doctorate, writing her dissertation on educational equity in America, a topic she'd become passionate about through the foundation's work. She was immediately recruited by 3 universities but chose to stay in Portland, accepting a position at Portland State. Their daughter, Lily Chen, was born on a rainy November morning, weighing 7 pounds and possessing her father's dark hair and her mother's fierce spirit. Marcus held her in the hospital room, overwhelmed by the weight of new responsibility and infinite love. "She's going to change the world," Emma predicted, watching Marcus cradle their daughter. "She already has," Marcus replied. "She's changed mine." The years unfolded like chapters in a book Marcus hadn't known he was writing. Lily grew into a curious, strong-willed toddler who demanded stories about numbers and social justice in equal measure. The Chen Educational Foundation expanded internationally, partnering with organizations in 12 countries. Emma's research on educational equity became influential in policy circles, and she was invited to testify before Congress. Marcus finally retired from full-time teaching when Lily turned 3, though he continued as a guest lecturer and maintained relationships with his former students. Many of them were now in college, several as Chen Foundation scholars, sending him updates about their studies and dreams. On Marcus's 40th birthday, Emma presented him with a leather-bound book. Inside were letters, hundreds of them, from students whose lives had been changed by the foundation, teachers whose classrooms had been transformed, and families whose trajectories had shifted because of scholarships and support. "I contacted everyone who'd been touched by your work," Emma explained. "I wanted you to see what you've built, not the dollar amount, the actual impact." Marcus spent that evening reading every letter, tears streaming down his face. A girl who'd been homeless was now studying medicine at Johns Hopkins. A boy from rural Montana was researching renewable energy at Stanford. A teacher whose school had been falling apart had sent photos of renovated classrooms filled with happy children. "This is what wealth is supposed to do," Marcus said to Emma that night, Lily asleep between them in bed. "Not buy yachts or penthouses, but create possibility for people who deserve a chance." "You sound like a philosophy professor," Emma teased gently. "Maybe that's my next career." "Absolutely not. We already have too many careers between us." 5 years after their wedding on a spring afternoon, Marcus received an unexpected letter. It was forwarded through his lawyer, the return address unfamiliar, somewhere in Arizona. "Dear Marcus," it began, and he recognized Sarah's handwriting immediately. "I don't expect you to read this, and I have no right to write it. But my therapist suggested I might find closure in saying things I never said properly. So here goes. I'm sorry. Truly deeply sorry for how I treated you. For what I said when I left, and for not seeing the incredible man you always were. You deserve better than my shallow judgment and misplaced priorities. You won't be surprised to learn that my life with Richard fell apart spectacularly. He was everything I thought I wanted and nothing I needed. When his empire collapsed and the fraud investigations began, I finally had to confront who I'd become. Someone I didn't recognize or like. I've spent the last 4 years rebuilding myself. I went back to school. Turns out I'm pretty good at social work. Moved to Phoenix for a fresh start and learned to measure success by contentment rather than bank balances. I'm dating a middle school teacher named Alex who makes me laugh and challenges me to be better. We live modestly and happily. I saw the news about your foundation's work and your family. Your wife Emma, I looked her up, she's remarkable and I'm genuinely happy for you both, is doing incredible research and your daughter is beautiful. You built the life we could have had if I'd been capable of seeing beyond my own insecurity and greed. I don't want anything from you. I'm not asking for forgiveness or friendship or even a response. I just wanted you to know that watching what you've accomplished has been part of my healing. You showed me what authentic success looks like, and I'm finally, slowly trying to build my own version of it. I hope you're happy, Marcus. You deserve every bit of happiness you've found. With genuine regret and respect, Sarah Mitchell. Marcus read the letter twice, then showed it to Emma. How do you feel? Emma asked. Glad she's found peace, Marcus said honestly, and grateful that I found you. He filed the letter away, not intending to respond. Sarah had said everything she needed to say, and he had nothing to add to the conversation. Some stories end not with dramatic confrontations or grand gestures, but simply with two people who once shared a life acknowledging that they're better apart. 10 years after Sarah had walked out calling him broke, Marcus Chen stood in his backyard watching his daughter chase fireflies while his pregnant wife, they'd decided one child wasn't enough after all, rested in a deck chair, reading a book. His mother was inside making dumplings with Emma's parents. James Rodriguez and his family were coming for dinner. Tomorrow, Marcus would attend a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Foundation's 100th school renovation. Next week, he'd speak at a summit on sustainable investing. Next month, he'd celebrate his daughter's first day of kindergarten at the same public school where he'd once taught. But tonight, he was simply a man in his backyard, wealthy beyond measure in all the ways that actually mattered. "Dad," Lily called. "Come catch fireflies with me." Marcus jogged across the lawn, scooping up his daughter and lifting her high so she could reach the glowing insects. She giggled, her joy pure and uncomplicated. Emma watched from the deck, her hand resting on her belly, smiling at the two people she loved most in the world, and Marcus Chen, who'd hidden a fortune to find true love, who'd been called a loser and a nobody, who'd built an empire while grading papers. Marcus Chen was finally, completely authentically happy. Not because of the billions in his accounts or the Foundation's impact or the accolades from Forbes and Harvard and Congress, but because he'd learned the truth his grandfather had tried to teach him when leaving that inheritance. Real wealth isn't what you have. It's who you love and how you love them. It's the lives you touch and the difference you make. It's the choice to build something meaningful rather than merely expensive. Sarah had wanted a rich man. She'd gotten one and it had brought her only misery. Emma had wanted a good man. She'd gotten one who happened to be rich. And together they were building something that would outlast any fortune. A family, a legacy of generosity, and a love story that had started in a teacher's lounge over terrible coffee and would continue for all the years to come. As fireflies danced around them in the gathering dusk, Marcus Chen held his daughter close and looked at his wife, and he knew with absolute certainty that he was the wealthiest man alive. Not despite Sarah's rejection, but because of it. Because sometimes losing everything you thought you wanted is how you find everything you actually need.